Hello, Fremont. This week we're looking at Mark 15, 1 through 15. I'd like to invite you to pause the video and read the passage, even if you think you already know it. Read it for detail, repeated words, and from a posture of wondering why Mark chose to record these particular events in this particular way. If you have a few extra minutes and you're looking for a slightly deeper dive, read the same accounts in Matthew chapter 27 and Luke chapter 23 and even John chapter 18. The facts are the same across all four books. The difference is the details. Mark offers a very direct telling of Jesus before Pilate, while Matthew, Luke, and John offer a more descriptive telling. So go ahead and pause the video now and read Mark 15, 1 through 15. In the passages right before chapter 15, we read that just the night before, Jesus is brought before the high priest, and that all of the chief priests, elders, and scribes come together to hear from what turns out to be false witnesses giving false testimony. They all condemn him as deserving death. At the start of chapter 15, Jesus is brought before Pilate. Jesus can't be condemned to death if he is only found worthy of death in a Jewish court. He also needs to be found worthy of death in a Roman court. Pontius Pilate is a governor of Rome who, under any other circumstances, would be a nothing person in the history of Rome. His one memorable act, and the reason the world knows of him, is because of how he conducts himself in this passage and the resulting outcome on Jesus' life. He was shrewd enough to realize that Jesus has been brought to him because of the envy of the priests, but he's too weak to do anything about it, choosing instead to satisfy the crowd. In Mark, the first words we see Pilate say to Jesus is a question: "Are you the king of the Jews?" He asks this because professing to be king was seen as rebellion against the emperor and was treason, with a sentence of death. Treason was what the priests had accused Jesus of when they brought him to Pilate. Jesus' answer is interesting, though, isn't it? He replies with, "You have said so." Jesus isn't saying yes, or Pilate would have had reason to execute him immediately, but he's not saying no either. In his great wisdom, he's saying that his kingship isn't the kind implied in Pilate's question. Jesus is the king of the Jews, but not in the way that the Jews are implying. Pilate tries again, but Jesus does not respond. Despite the truth about him being twisted and despite all these other accusations, Jesus remains silent. He doesn't try to set the record straight. This isn't a silence of defeat, but a silence of surrender to God's will. Jesus knows he's innocent. He knows that what's being said isn't true. He knows that this is not a fair trial, yet he quietly resigns himself to the will of his Father. He isn't argumentative or angry. He's resolved to do what God wants. In verses 6 through 11, we learn that a murderer named Barabbas gets to go free instead of Jesus. A convicted murderer is set free while an innocent man is condemned to death. But there is another exchange. Jesus exchanged his life for ours, and Isaiah 53 is fulfilled. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. By oppression and judgment, he was taken away. The only person who didn't deserve to die was condemned to death by envious religious people, a politically motivated coward, and a crowd following the rage of their leaders. Jesus did nothing wrong. Paul says in Romans 8:32, "He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also with him graciously give us all things?" The logic of this verse is this: if God was willing to give up his son for us, won't he also work out all things for the good of those who love him? We can let this truth sustain us and comfort us and empower us. See you Sunday.